I used to make solid money and still feel like I was drowning by the 25th of every month. Nice job, decent paycheck, almost nothing to show for it. For a long time, I thought the fix was simple: earn more. Then I sat down one weekend and mapped out where every dollar was going, and found something that honestly made me a little angry at myself. It was never about how much I made. It was about 10 habits I kept repeating on autopilot, mostly because everyone around me was doing the exact same thing, so it never even occurred to me to question any of it. So today, I'm drawing a hard line. These are 10 things I will not do with my money ever again. And the very first one alone is quietly costing the average person hundreds of dollars a year without them ever noticing it happening. Fair warning, some of these will sound almost too simple. You might roll your eyes. And somewhere in the next few minutes, you'll catch yourself doing at least 3 of them right now. That's not an accident. The habits that hurt you most are rarely dramatic. They're quiet, boring, socially approved. The ones that feel responsible right up until you run the numbers. Let's run them. Number 1. I refuse to let my money sit in a big-name bank savings account earning basically nothing. Let me introduce you to a guy I'll call Marcus. 41, cautious with money, the type who checks his balance every week just to feel in control. For 9 years, he kept his entire emergency cushion, about $18,000, parked in a savings account at one of the largest banks in the country. He felt smart, responsible, like he'd done the adult thing. Here's the problem nobody told him. That account was paying him around 0.01% interest. On $18,000, that works out to less than $2 a year. And it's not just Marcus's bank being unusually stingy. The average savings account nationwide right now pays somewhere around 0.33%, give or take. Meanwhile, the better online high-yield accounts have been paying somewhere close to 4%, fully insured with the same instant access to your cash you'd get from any branch. Run the comparison on $10,000. A traditional big bank hands you roughly $10 for the year. A high-yield account can hand you somewhere in the range of $400. Same money, same safety net. The only difference is which app holds it. And that gap can be worth a car payment every single year for doing nothing but moving your money once. Here's why this happens, psychologically. Big banks can pay almost nothing because they're betting on one human trait: you won't bother to move your money. Switching feels like a chore, so they price your loyalty at a couple of dollars a year. We stay because the account already exists, not because it serves us. That's inertia, and banks build entire business models around it. The moment Marcus finally transferred his savings to an online high-yield account, he earned more in 30 days than his old bank had paid him across almost a decade. A decade of responsible saving undone in one afternoon of paperwork. If you take nothing else from this video, take this. Check your interest rate today.
Number 2, I refuse to carry a balance on a credit card. This is the trap that catches the most people, and it hides behind one deceptively comforting word: minimum. Credit cards carrying a balance have been averaging somewhere around 20 to 22% interest in recent years. Collectively, that adds up to hundreds of billions of dollars paid every year in interest and fees alone. Not for anything anyone bought, just for the privilege of taking time to pay for it. Take Priya. She had about $6,500 on one card and paid the minimum every month right on the due date, feeling completely in control. At roughly 22%, that balance was quietly generating close to $1,500 a year in interest. Paying only the minimum, that originate balance would take her close to 8 years to pay off. And by the time she was done, she'd have paid nearly double what she originally spent. She never missed a payment. She wasn't careless. Her card was simply built to keep her exactly where she was. That's the uncomfortable truth about minimum payments. They feel like discipline, but they function like a leash. Your card issuer is thrilled when you pay the minimum because that's exactly where their profit lives.
Here's the part that stings the most. Interest works the same way for debt as it does for investing. It compounds. It just compounds against you instead of for you. The exact same force aimed the wrong direction, working every day to keep you behind. So my rule is simple, and I don't bend it. If I can't pay the full statement balance, I don't make the purchase. A credit card is a convenience tool, never a way to borrow money at 20+%. The second a balance rolls into next month, that card flips from working for you to working against you. If you already have a balance sitting there, don't panic. And don't ignore it either. Pick one method and start today. Attack the smallest balance first for momentum, or the highest rate first to save the most money. The method matters less than actually starting. Number 3, I refuse to run my regular life through buy now, pay later. This one's newer, and it's spreading fast. A large and growing share of adults have now used one of these split payment services. 4 easy payments. Feels painless in the moment. The problem shows up in the pattern behind it. A meaningful chunk of users have paid late on one of these plans in the past year, and a majority are juggling more than one. Meet Deshaun, 26, never thought of himself as in debt since he didn't have a scary credit card balance. What he actually had was 4 buy now, pay later plans running at once. A jacket, shoes, and more often, his groceries. A notable share of users of these apps are now using them to buy food. Sit with that for a second. When you're financing a grocery run in 4 installments, the payment plan isn't the problem. It's a symptom that your budget is already stretched thinner than you're willing to admit. These platforms are engineered, quite deliberately, to make spending feel smaller than it is. That's the business model. Lower the emotional friction so you say yes to things you'd have hesitated on if you had to feel the full price at once. This is a well-documented effect called payment decoupling. The further your brain feels from the pain of paying, the easier it is to keep clicking buy. Research on these apps shows people spend more per order and buy things they wouldn't otherwise. The average user tends to carry a couple $1,000s spread across tiny installments that never individually feel like debt, until they stack into something that very... Personally, I'd rather feel the full sting of a price tag once and make an honest decision. That flinch at checkout, that's useful information, not something to engineer away. Before checking out anywhere, add up every active installment plan you currently have running. Most people are shocked by the total once they see it in one place. I refuse to chop up my life into slices just to trick myself into thinking today is cheaper than it is. Number 4, I refuse to buy a brand new car and finance it for 6 or 7 years. This is the quiet fortune killer, and the one people defend hardest because it genuinely feels good in the moment. The average new car in America now runs close to $50,000, and the average monthly payment has climbed to record highs, well north of $700 for a lot of buyers. A significant share of new car buyers are now paying $1,000 a month or more on a vehicle that starts losing value the moment they pull off the lot. Take Colin. He financed a new SUV, $50,000 at 7% over 6 years, and felt incredible driving it home. Here's what that feeling actually cost him. A new car typically loses around 20% of its value in year 1 alone. So before his 12th payment, roughly $10,000 of that vehicle had simply evaporated. Stretch that over the full loan, and he'll pay well over $10,000 in interest on top of the sticker price. And there's an uglier layer underneath. A large share of people trading in a car today owe more than it's worth, often by several $1,000s. They roll that gap into the next loan and start already behind, financing a chunk of a car they don't even own yet. That's how someone ends up making car payments for 10 straight years and never actually owns a vehicle outright. None of this makes a new car bad to own. It just makes financing one for most of a decade the most expensive way people ever feel like they're moving up. while actually sliding backward. A reliable used car, bought with cash or a short loan and driven for years after it's paid off, is one of the clearest quiet wealth signals there is. The person driving the modest, paid-off sedan is very often richer than the one leasing the badge next to them at the light. A guideline worth borrowing is the 24-10 rule. 20% down, no more than 4 years financed, monthly cost under 10% of your gross income. It keeps a car in its proper place, a tool, not a decision that follows you for 6 years. So I refuse to sign away years of my future for new car smell. Number 5, I refuse to walk away from free money. There's one benefit buried inside most job offers that people leave on the table constantly, and it's about as close to free money as you'll find: the employer match on a retirement account. If your company matches contributions, and many that offer a plan match around 4 to 6% of your salary, then every dollar you don't contribute is essentially a raise.
Take Nadia, earning $60,000 a year, whose company matches dollar for dollar up to a certain percentage. By contributing enough to capture the full match, she picks up an extra $1,800 to $2,400 a year, money her employer gives her free, stacked on top of her own savings. Now, watch what happens over time. That free match alone, invested and grown at typical historical returns, can turn into more than $200,000 over a 30-year career. And that's just the free portion. Think about how strange this is. If your manager offered you $2,000 in cash, no strings attached, you'd take it instantly. Skipping the match is turning down that exact offer over and over, simply because it's buried inside a benefits form you never opened. You don't need to max out your contributions here. Just grab every dollar your company is already offering. Not sure if your job has a match? Check your HR portal this week. Skipping it is the most expensive kind of nothing you will ever do. Number 6, I refuse to try to time the market. Everyone dreams of buying low and selling high, and almost nobody can pull it off twice in a row, consistently, over a lifetime. Stocks have historically returned around 10% a year on average, closer to 7% after inflation. But that growth doesn't arrive smoothly. It shows up in bursts, often concentrated in a small handful of unpredictable days scattered across years that felt genuinely terrifying while you lived through them.
Take Owen. He pulled his money out during a rough patch because it felt safe, told himself he'd jump back in once things settled, then watched from the sidelines as the market bounced back without him. By the time he felt comfortable re-entering, most of the recovery had already happened. He didn't avoid the loss. He locked it in, then missed the rebound that would have erased it. That's the double punishment nearly every market timer walks into. Here's the quiet math that should change how you think about this. Someone who simply invests $500 a month and never touches it can realistically end up close to $1 million after 30 years, just by staying put through every scary headline. The people trying to be clever, hopping in and out on gut feeling, usually end up with a fraction of that, because they're almost never out for the crash and in for the bounce. You have to be right twice, at the exact moment every instinct screams the opposite. Time in the market beats timing the market, and it isn't close. The fix isn't willpower, it's automation. Set up a recurring transfer into your investment account on payday before you ever see the money. So I refuse to gamble my future on a bet I have no honest, repeatable way of winning. If this is hitting home so far, hit subscribe, because the next rule is the foundation the rest of this list is actually built on top of. Everything gets harder without it. Number 7, I refuse to live without an emergency fund. Right now, a large share of people couldn't cover a $1,000 emergency out of savings if they had to. Roughly 1 in 3 would need to borrow the money or go into debt just to handle it. Even among people who do have savings set aside, the typical balance has dropped to somewhere around $5,000, which disappears fast when real life shows up. Take Nina.
Her transmission gave out the same week her hours got cut at work. Without a cushion, a rough week turns into a credit card balance at 20+% interest, which turns into a monthly payment, which turns into exactly the trap we already talked about earlier. With a cushion, that same rough week is just an annoying Tuesday you handle and move past. That's the entire difference, and it decides which direction your whole financial life bends after a shock hits.
Here's the mindset shift that matters. Your emergency fund isn't supposed to make you money. That's not its job. Its job is to be boring and available, to stop one hard moment from knocking over every other good decision you've made. It's what lets you say no to a predatory loan, walk away from a toxic job, and actually sleep at night during a rough month. Experts point to roughly 3 to 6 months of essential expenses as the long-term target, kept in that same high-yield account from Rule 1 so it earns something while it waits. If that feels far away, start smaller. Even $1,000 absorbs most minor disasters, and automate a small transfer every paycheck. You don't build it in a weekend. You build it on purpose until life tests you and you get to stay calm instead of scrambling. Number 8, I refuse to let lifestyle creep eat every raise. This is why so many people earn more year after year and never actually feel richer for it. Every time income goes up, spending quietly rises with it. A bigger paycheck becomes a bigger apartment, a nicer car, a longer list of monthly bills. And the extra room that was supposed to change your life gets absorbed before you. The national numbers tell the story on their own. People are currently saving only a small percentage of their income on average, well below the long-term historical average, and a fraction of what was normal a few decades ago. We're not necessarily earning less than previous generations in real terms. We're simply keeping far less of what flows through our hands, because the pressure to upgrade the moment we can afford to never really lets up. Take Trevor. Over 10 years, his salary climbed by tens of thousands of dollars, and his savings barely moved, because every raise arrived with a matching lifestyle upgrade already attached. When he finally froze his spending and redirected his next raise straight into investing, the outcome was staggering. Saving 15% of a $60,000 income over 30 years can build past $1 million at typical returns. Saving only around 4% builds somewhere around $300,000. Same paycheck, same career, a completely different retirement, decided almost entirely by how much of each raise he actually let himself keep. Here's a rule worth stealing. Next time you get a raise, before adjusting your lifestyle, increase your automatic savings percentage by half of it first. Enjoy the other half, but the future gets first pick, not the leftovers. A raise only counts as a raise if some of it reaches your future self. So I refuse to spend my next promotion the second it lands. Number 9, I refuse to spend money to look rich for people who aren't paying my bills. This is the psychological one, and maybe the most freeing rule on this list. So much of what people buy isn't for themselves. It's a costume, worn for coworkers, neighbors, and strangers online who'll forget about it within the hour. The logo, the upgraded trim, the table reservation posted for an audience. It's a performance. And the audience isn't chipping in for the bill. Take Alicia. She spent years buying the version of her life that looked impressive from the outside, and underneath it, she was quietly stressed and broke. Her turning point came when she realized the people she was trying to impress weren't actually thinking about her at all. They were too busy performing for their own audience. There's a name for this trap in psychology, the hedonic treadmill, where each upgrade resets your baseline and leaves you chasing the next one just to feel the same as before. Real wealth almost never looks like the version sold in movies and ads. It's usually quiet, plain, and completely uninterested in impressing anyone. The person driving the paid-off, unremarkable car and quietly building a fat investment account will never turn a head at a red light. and they sleep far better than the person financing the flashy one idling next to them. A simple fix is a 24-hour rule for anything you're buying mainly to be seen with. Wait a day and ask honestly if you'd still want it if nobody would ever know you had it. The moment you stop paying to perform, a shocking amount of money frees up for the life you actually want. So I refuse to fund an image for people who have zero stake in my future. Number 10, I refuse to keep paying for things I don't use. This is the slow leak hiding in plain sight, right there on your bank statement. The average adult now spends over $100 a month across 8 or more subscriptions, and a chunk of that is money going toward things they've completely forgotten they're paying for. A large share of people admit they're currently charged for at least one subscription they no longer use. On average, people waste around $20 a month this way, roughly $250 a year on services they never open. That number sounds small until you let it compound like everything else on this list. $250 a year invested instead over 30 years at typical returns can grow into close to $30,000. That's a real vacation or a serious down payment, sitting inside the free trials you forgot to cancel and the app you tried once and never opened again. And subscriptions are just the visible version of this leak. The same thing happens with fees you never question, plans you've outgrown, and auto renewals you keep meaning to look at and never do. The fix costs 1 honest hour, worth a recurring calendar reminder every few months, since new subscriptions creep back in. Go through your statement and ask one question about every recurring charge. If this disappeared today, would I sign up again at full price? If no, cancel it now. So those are the 10. And here's the thing that took me way too long to understand. Not one of them is really about earning more money. Every single one is about refusing to let out what you already have. You don't need a bigger shovel if you haven't patched the holes in the bucket you're already carrying. Most people spend their entire lives chasing a bigger income, while the real damage happens quietly, at the bottom, completely out of sight. And the reason almost none of us were taught any of this is worth sitting with. Nobody handed you a class on how compound interest works, what an employer match really means, or why a normal-looking savings account can quietly work against you while you feel responsible for having one. That's the real gap, and it's exactly what I want to keep helping you close on this channel. So tell me, which of these 10 did you see yourself in the most? Have you already broken up with one of them? And what actually changed for you when you did? Drop the habit you're refusing to repeat starting today and the real story behind it in the comments below.